Well, good afternoon and welcome to a special dialogue assessing the possibility of rehabilitation for persons with physical disability in Uganda. Back in 2006, COSU was established, a private, non-profit, non-government organization in Uganda and heavily supported by Christian Blind Mission, which is CBM. The main aim of the organization since conception was to expand and improve the comprehensive rehabilitation services for children with disability in Uganda and with the East African region. COSU Hospital, in partnership with Christian Blind Mission, BMZ, Katalima Cheshire Homes and Organized Useful Rehabilitation Services, are implementing a CBID project that aims at improvement of the quality of life for over 15,000 persons with disabilities and their families in 10 districts of Uganda. The CBID project in Uganda is offering an integrated package of interventions that is contributing towards improving access to quality medical services, rehabilitation services and social services of persons with disabilities and their families in over 10 districts in Uganda by 2024. Now in studio, I'm joined by Dr. Emmanuel Ewochu, an orthopedic surgeon at COSU Hospital, Winifred Amoge, BMZ project coordinator, and Stanley Lubega, assistant head of rehabilitation at COSU Hospital. To create awareness about physical disability and rehabilitation, that is the discussion that we are going to have. My name is Idris Matusegawa, and on sign language is Susan Mujawa. To be part of this conversation, go to our social media platforms and use the hashtag disability inclusion. Look out for NTV Uganda and tell us what is your experience. Coming back to studio, I will start with the lady. Miss Winfred, just introduce yourself and tell us what exactly you do at BMZ.
Okay, my name is Winnie. I work at COSU Hospital as a project coordinator for the BMZ project. What do? I am, okay, the project is a consortium project.
Yeah.
It's implemented by 3 partners, COSU being the lead partner, but and implementing in Wakiso and Kampala, Central Region. And we have Katalema Cheshire Home implementing in Eastern Uganda,
Yes.
covering 4 districts of Iganga, Kamuli, Mayuge and Mayingo. And then we have ours in Mbarara, that is organized useful rehabilitation services, covering Mbarara, Bushenyi, and Ibanda and Kasese. So that's what I do. I sit at COSU and coordinate the implementation of this project. Really, as a link between the rehabilitation facilities and the communities.
The community,
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
Stanley,
Yes.
the people want to know exactly who you are and what you do at COSU.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stanley Lubega. Primarily, I'm a physiotherapist, and that is basically my profession. And I also assist the head of rehabilitation, and my department includes physiotherapy, occupational therapy, orthopedic workshop, nutrition, speech and language therapist. So all together, that makes the rehabilitation section. So I'm happy to be here and to share what we do as a department.
As a hospital.
Yeah.
Dr. Emmanuel,
Yes, Idris.
tell us, as who is an orthopedic surgeon?
An orthopedic surgeon, I would say, is a special specialty. Is that person who is really trained, must be trained to fix physical handicap. Could be injuries or could be physical handicap arising from birth defects. But ultimately, your orthopedic surgeon is that person who is going to fix your physical handicap.
Whatever, either it's naturally or acquired. Before we started the talk show, we were having a conversation on how long you've been at COSU.
I've been at COSU for quite a long time. Despite my outlook, people refer to me as the mosaic of the hospital. Since I've been associated with COSU since August 2009, it's quite a long time. And I've become passionate about what COSU does in terms of really dealing with physical disability, especially for the marginalized communities
Indeed.
in the region, not necessarily Uganda, but in the region. Yeah.
Yeah. And that brings me to Miss Winifred Amoge. Tell us, who is KOSU and what are your mandates? What are your core mandates?
KOSU Hospital is, would like to think of ourselves as a very special hospital because what we do is really specialized. And the kind of services that we offer, would like to be good at them. So we're a specialized hospital that handles physical disability, strictly. That's our mandate, physical disability. Yes. So all the programs that we run, all the theaters, the doctors, the surgeons, the orthopedic, everyone else is geared towards really providing quality comprehensive services for physical disability. Yes, we have different other things that we run as a hospital because then it's a complete hospital. We tend to look at ourselves as holistic. We have the surgeons and then we have the therapy department. We have the nutrition rehabilitation. We have the social work department. All of this really preparing the clients, preparing the different patients that we have for, you know, if they came, say, with a club foot, you need to prepare them for the processes. So each person in KOSU, each department in KOSU, we tend to look at ourselves as a special hospital that is preparing someone to be able to get medical services, but preparing them even for life outside of the hospital. Yes, we are over 13 years now. We are over 13 years now. We have, we were established initially to serve children, but over time that has changed. I know that initially we were supposed to serve, I believe, 80% children, 20% adults, but now the numbers fluctuate. Yes. Also, there are children that may receive our services when they are still children, but over time they still need to be managed. Their, you know, conditions still need to be managed. Dr. Emmanuel will go into the details of that. So yes, eventually that has changed, and now we are not strictly handling children, although most of our subsidized services we subsidize for children. I think, yes, that's it.
When you talk of children, that back in 2006 when the hospital was being established, the focus was on children. What informed that decision?
Well, I believe it's a great need. Yeah, there's great need in communities, especially for children, but also looking at providing a child the kind of services that we offer, say rehabilitation services that we offer. We tend to think that if somebody received these services when they are still young, their conditions will be better managed than, for example, when they come when they are much older. Yeah. So also, the population that we serve is a very vulnerable population. Many of the clients that we receive are actually from rural areas in Uganda. And as you look at children, the condition is even more dire if they are from poor families and they have all these conditions, say cerebral palsy, and they are from, you know, and these families have multiple children. Some families have multiple children with different disabilities. So it comes from that. The call comes from that we are here to serve children. Our mandate is children. We don't want to deviate from that. We don't want to deviate from that. And that's why many of our subsidies are for actually children, because we want to stay focused on bettering someone's quality of life from when they are young. Yes, earlier on, such that they are able to enjoy a more dignified life throughout. Yeah.
So even though you're focused on children, but you don't want to segregate as the numbers keep on evolving. And I'll come to you, Stanley.
Yes.
She talked about the different departments at KOSU, and one of them, we understand that you are into rehabilitation. Tell us more about what makes your department at KOSU stand out from other rehabilitation centers that we might have in Uganda.
Okay. Rehabilitation is a global thing. And many people require rehabilitation around the world. And COSU, primarily, we put a lot of effort in rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And when we talk about rehabilitation, mainly we talk about a set of goals that are aimed at improving someone who has suffered trauma, either injury, to make sure that they live a quality life. Now, what makes us stand out as COSU? First of all, she talked about the core mandate. We focus mainly on children. That's the primary focus. Almost 80% of the patients that we see are children. Only that of late that number has reduced. But our core mandate is children. Now, rehabilitation, for it to be efficient, it's easier when it is started early. When someone is still a child and then you start rehabilitating them, there is a tendency of getting much more results and getting much more functionability from a child than when they're adults, because when it is still a child, when you change things and then the child as they are growing, then they change along and then they're able to get much more function. What makes us stand out? Like the word sounds, COSU, we are comprehensive. When we talk about rehabilitation, we don't only talk about physical rehab or social rehab or psychological rehab. No, we look at a patient as a whole. In the rehabilitation department, we have a physiotherapy section where we deal purely about the physical rehabilitation. Then we have occupational therapy where we deal with the functionability of a patient or a child. Then we talk about speech therapy, where if someone is not able to speak, if someone has suffered from a stroke, if a child has suffered from a neurological disorder, they need to learn how to speak. It's a specialty of its own, and we have it at COSU. We talk about psychological support. Disability is a lifelong condition, and people need support over and over again. It's not something that they overcome in a year or 2 years or 3 years, but throughout their lifetime, they need that support, starting from when they are children. When they are children, we support them psychologically with their parents. As they grow up into young adults, we start supporting them as adults. So we have that service as COSU. And also we have nutritional rehabilitation. It's very important to blend medicine and food, because like some say, food is medication.
Yeah.
So these children need as many nutrients as possible in order to evert whatever physical or illness they have. That we have at COSU. We also have educational services. These children who are undergoing rehabilitation, we make sure that we bridge the gap between their school and them having rehabilitation. So we make sure that they get as much education as possible. So we have that service at COSU. So what makes us stand out is the wholesome approach of a patient. We make sure that we cover all the bases that we need to cover in order for the child to come out as important as they should.
You've mentioned that over years, the number of children that you receive at the hospital has gone down. What could have been the cause of that?
When we opened our doors as COSU, our core mandate was to basically take care of children.
Yeah.
But as the service went out, as we continued treating the patients, we opened our doors to the adults as well.
Yeah.
Now, because of the comprehensive service that I've mentioned, it doesn't necessarily only go to the children. It extends all the way to the adults. Now, people know a good service when they see one. So as time went on, people started to recognize the service that COSU offers. So the numbers started balancing out. The adults became many, then the children depleted, then they became many. But when you look at them, the children are now less, the adults are becoming more. So they are almost balancing out over the years. But that doesn't stop us from performing our core mandate, which is giving the quality service to the children. So we are still giving that as much as seeing the numbers that we have for the adults.
Winfred and yourself have mentioned something that is constant in whatever mandate as COSU have, is improving someone's life who has a disability. What has been your experience in helping these patients? Have you had successful stories that people come back and tell you, without KOSU, my life would have been so different?
Well, I don't even have the words to try and explain how much success or how much pride it gives me to be a part of the success stories that we have as KOSU. Over the years, we have plenty of success stories. Some of them we publish through our annual reports. Some of them we publish through our social media handles, and some we don't publish because there are quite a number of them.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of pleasure from patients coming and they tell us, oh, you've changed my life. If it wasn't for KOSU, I wouldn't have done this. There are so many children's lives that we have touched. Throughout the year, we almost do about 5,000 surgeries. And I must say all of those ones, the majority of them are success stories, because you change a child from not being functional to being functional to a certain level. All that is success. And some of the patients that actually come to visit KOSU, they look at that as, when they look at the conditions there, when they look at the children in their state, they look at it as depressing. Now, for some of us who have been there, we look at it as something that encourages us to do more and try to change something about this child's condition. Because at the end of the day, you picture yourself being that child. I mean, if you don't do anything, who will do it? Because you've made a name for changing lives and transforming lives, you look at each patient as being someone who is able to change something about the nation. So you try and do as much as possible to make them as functional as possible. Yes.
Dr. Emo.
Yes, Idris.
We've seen the rehabilitation department coming to the orthopedic department. What kind of services do you offer at KOSU and at that particular department?
Okay, you've narrowed it down to only orthopedics, but I'll also take the chance to expound on the other departments. Keep in mind that we are about 14 specialists at the hospital. The medical director being a renowned pediatric pediatric surgeon, 4 plastic surgeons, a gynecologist, and a pediatrician. So I'm just one of the 7 orthopedic surgeons locally sourced and trained by the country. Okay. So we as orthopedic surgeons, right from, our approach is really holistic, okay? But right from when you're born, okay? Every young couple, every grandparent wants to have that perfect grandchild, perfect child. So when that child is born, everybody wants to check them out. Is that the child we expected? Do they have any kind of handicap, whether physical or mental? So when that child is born, could be having a club foot, could be having a dislocated hip, could be having a neurodeformity at the back. So all those we can handle at KOSU. And then there are conditions that you get as you grow up, okay? As a toddler, okay? You could start getting things like angular deformities around your knees, abnormalities in the feet, okay? So it's not uncommon for mothers to come in and say, doctor, I would like you to check the angles of the knees of my child. Or I would like you to ascertain, will my child have the actual stature, that is the height of the child? Are they going to be a short-statured person or will be of normal height? Those are things you really want to assess as a child develops. Then there are conditions that you get in adolescence, okay? This could be issues around the hips, okay? There could be issues to do with early sporting life. You know, when kids are adolescents, they are playing lots of rugby, lots of hockey, lots of football, and they are bound to have injuries around the groin skeleton, which are quite complex to manage, by the way, not like any other usual skeletal injuries. Injuries of a groin skeleton are not very, very familiar to most of the specialists, and therefore they might need really a keen eye to look at. And then there are conditions that you get in early adulthood when you're starting to hustle and look for money. That's when you take that first border. Before you know it, somebody puts you in a ditch. And then you come with that fracture, severe pelvic injuries. All those things is a spectrum of conditions you can be able to handle. And then as you grow beyond the 4th floor, you start getting conditions like back problems, destroyed hips and knees from all the work you've done through life. And then you present with what we call degenerative disease. diseases of the spine and of the major weight-bearing joints. So we are able to do things like joint replacements for the knees and the hips. Probably we are having the highest number in the region. Yeah.
You mentioned degenerative diseases of the spine. Could you expound on that more? Because when you mentioned it, the first thing that crossed my mind was us sitting properly or improperly, and then you get back pain. Is that also qualified under that?
Yeah, it definitely qualifies as that. We are lucky to have gentlemen like Stanley and his team. Usually when patients present to my clinic with chronic low back pain, sometimes I wonder what we are going to do different for them. But when you have a deeper talk with the client, you actually realize that probably the physical rehabilitation needs to be worked out a little better. And that's why having a comprehensive approach to a back pain problem might actually be very beneficial. Keep in mind that over 70% of us will somehow present with a symptom of low back pain in a year. And that's really a substantial, significant amount of the populace that is presenting to our clinic. So I bet we are doing a good job.
As a surgeon, what are the most common procedures that you carry out at KOSU?
We see at KOSU about 20% of the patients that come in, 20 to 30% through the years have been diseases associated with bone infection. Bone infection is what people call osteomyelitis. The local language calls it a talo. It's really unfortunate when you find children deep in the village walking with exposed bone, with significant bone loss. Historically, that patient would actually qualify for an amputation, okay? But children coming in with bone loss resulting from osteomyelitis or bone infection, we are now able to save those limbs with special techniques called bone transport and bone lengthening. Quite expensive and tedious for both the surgeon and the patient, but ultimately that patient gets back their limb and they're able to walk. When you look at the public health specialists, they talk about disability adjusted life years. So you imagine, that's why our core mandate is actually children. So if you're disabled at 2 years of age, imagine living with that disability through your life. But if we have an intervention early in life, we are able to cut down that disability life, okay? Vis-a-vis somebody who comes in at 100 years of age, you might not be as aggressive in dealing with their physical handicap as you'd be aggressive in dealing with a child who is 5 years of age.
Because they are even more fragile.
Yeah.
So as a surgeon, you take care of people with disability and all these conditions. What advice would you give patients or would-be patients in handling physical disability?
When you have a physical disability, sometimes the psychological trauma that comes with it might even be worse than the physical handicap you're actually suffering from. Keep in mind that sometimes when somebody is physically disabled, the society might have a perception that they're also mentally handicapped. I don't know why. So you find that you're dealing with your physical handicap, you're dealing with the societal assignment that you're also probably mentally handicapped. But actually you're just having a physical deformity that needs to be addressed. So first and foremost, you really need to get psychological support. Could be from your family. Don't really isolate yourself. And then seek health care from professionals that can actually give you information to make an informed decision on the condition that you're having. So it's, unfortunately, there are very many things that might hinder somebody to access care, but probably we can expand on that later.
Winfred,
Yes.
I'll come back to you. Dr. Emma has mentioned something that we see a lot, and that is assuming that someone who is physically disabled is either mentally handicapped or they have more problems than you see. What are some of the stories that you have encountered or been told by people who are disabled on how they manage to go through society without that discrimination and kind of stigma that might come with their physical appearance?
So Unlike the two gentlemen, I interact with community a lot because we go out into the communities. Really, there's a lot of stigma that happens in communities for persons living with disabilities and their families, their caregivers as well. So that in effect isolates them, okay? It isolates them, and then they're not able to contribute in society. They're not able to contribute during, say, meetings or whatever productive activities are happening in communities. And the stigma is even, you know, it's real even for caregivers. You find mothers are burdened as well by society because, say, usually, I don't normally like to say this, but usually the fathers abandon the mothers or the grandparents to take care of these children. And so there's a lot of trauma that happens, you know, behind the scenes, even for those that give the care. So what we do is usually we encourage them, first of all, to be assertive themselves. We engage them in activities to be assertive themselves and to not look down upon themselves. We also encourage parents to form parent support groups. There are parent support groups that are there. Of course, we do this together with the community development officers, government structures. And the sole reason of, you know, having these groups is such that they are able to support themselves. One, they're able to, they're trained on how to say, manage, simple management of their conditions. Of course, professionals do the trainings. But also, they're able to support themselves and be able to also seek resources. There are government resources, grants that come for such caregivers, but also for persons living with disability. But the first thing that we train them is really in life skills. You need to be assertive. This condition that you have is a lifelong condition. The better you come, the faster you come out, the better for you. Just really having discussions. That's the first therapy, is really having discussions with these people. And we try to engage them in different activities, community activities. We try to skill them. There are skilling programs, not just for life skills, just to get them involved, build their esteem, and make them, you know, part of society. Yes, that's just a small thing of what we do. But also, I don't want to go without saying this, that all of us are moving towards, anytime we can, any one of us can, you know, get disabled. Yes. So as I engage the structures, not just in the communities, but also in government departments, I always encourage them to be more to be more sensitive to the needs of persons living with disability, because any of us can get disabled at any one time.
Definitely.
But also, really, we want to engage the representatives of persons living with disabilities. We have only 5 MPs, but we know we are, you know, 12.4, 12.5% of the total population of Uganda. We are engaging also leaders, from members of parliament to their representatives at lower level, you know, to have discussions with these people, to raise their issues in the meetings where they attend, such that their ideas are represented. Really, a person living with disability is a person. They are a complete person. They have, you know, all the rights that you have as Idris, and they would like to participate. Okay, we would like to see children going to school. They want to also be part of it. It's not for winning, but so that they can participate and be happy and feel happy. These are things that we are doing, but really it's just a drop in the ocean for us. Would like to, everyone can get involved.
Can get involved.
Yes, everyone can get involved.
On that note, I'm going to move to Stanley and again ask a similar question of what are some of the challenges that your patients have probably expressed to you that they face in society? Because the whole point of making their life better in society starts from what challenges they are facing there.
Over the years, through interaction with patients, there is still a lot of stigmatization, especially for parents who have children who are born with deformities, for example. By the time you are expecting a child, you don't expect a child to come out the way they have come out. We've had a lot of parents come to the hospital screaming. They don't understand what they have actually produced. So, and because of that, when they go back home, whether they are satisfied with the service or not, they will first hold out because they are afraid of what the society is going to say about their child. And of course, some of them don't even seek services. We've had some of them, let's say if you have a child who has a neurological disorder, let's say cerebral palsy, some parents are still afraid that they keep the child from when they are born to maybe when they are 7 years of age. And by the time they bring them to the hospital, you literally can't do much because the child is an adult. And you want to change the child as they are growing. So you might find that you don't have a lot of things to change because the child has, some of the structures have grown in a way that is undesirable. So, and that is because of the stigma that is in the community out there. And of course, accessibility to services is also another thing. Rehabilitation is important when it is at the primary health care, as a primary health care. And as you realize, if I can take an example of physiotherapy, it is not at health center falls. It starts from regional hospitals to referral hospitals. So it doesn't reach the grassroots of where it's supposed to reach. In a certain village, you might find that there is no physiotherapy. Then you go to, let's say, a parish and there is no physiotherapy. Then you go to a district and there is no physiotherapy. Until you go to the region, that's where you can be able to access rehabilitation. And that's really, really far. So for someone who is supposed to foot transport, get time off, look for resources here and there, maybe get time off work to take the child to be rehabilitated, that will be a lot of asking because you're asking them to get from one district to another. And everything has been complicated by the insurgence of COVID and everything, traveling, expenses have gone high. So that just came into what has been pre-existing of unavailability of rehabilitation at the grassroots. In addition, awareness. People lack awareness about rehabilitation. Some, like for example, some people you might be there and you have back pain, and you don't know that it's something that needs to be rehabilitated. You might be there, then you fall, and then your knee swells, and then you don't know what to do. And because someone tells you that, just leave it alone, maybe just bandage it or put something hot on it, and you think when you do that and the pain goes away, your knee is fine. So there is a lot of misconceptions, there are a lot of myths that because we live in communities, they are around us. So the first information that you get might be misleading information. And because that's what is available, it's what you take when you're treating a certain condition. And you might find that it makes the condition worse. So there is also that gap of awareness. We need awareness. And also the availability of specialized services is also something that is lacking. You might go to a hospital and then your service is not available, yet it's a regional hospital. Maybe you need an occupational therapist, maybe you need a speech therapist, and the service is not there. So you'll go back home because you can't move from Shema to Kampala because that's where the service is. This also that availability of service are some of the things that hinder people seeking for rehabilitation services. So it's quite a number of things that hinder people from accessing rehabilitation services. And
talking of hindrance, I'll come to you, Dr. Emma. As when we hear specialized service, normally at the end of the financial spectrum, it's high.
Yes.
At KOSU, is it affordable to actually come and get a procedure from you?
Thank you, Idris. I think it's pretty affordable for the type of service that is expected from the team. I must say, KOSU was lucky to start out with CBM as the funder, because CBM managed to prioritize and scale up training of specialists through the ranks in plastics and orthopedics. And that has tried to maintain a core team within the hospital. And that assures continuity of patient care that is coming to KOSU. So in terms of fees, the fees for the pediatric sections are pretty affordable for most of our clients. And then we have clients in the adult population, again in two categories. And sometimes, actually, why we actually set out the adult private clinics is we're trying to, again, subsidize the fees for our children. Remember, that parent who has a disabled child already has overhead costs in transportation. They will not go into the usual taxi. They'll need to get, I won't say Uber, they don't get a special hire. Okay, they need to buy a special device, crutches. They are spending on wheelchairs. They are spending on schools that are farther away from their locality. So the overheads in expenditure for a family with a child with a disability is quite high. So we as KOSU, we put that in mind even when we are trying to come up with these fees. We try to make sure that the fees for our children are really purely subsidized. Like the bare minimum the hospital can really sustain to run.
Are there outstanding stories that you've gotten from some of your patients?
In terms of
in terms of changing their lives?
Definitely, definitely. There are times I look at patient stories way back in 2010, and then you're taking this clip of a child, and then they come in 10 years later. Sometimes it amazes me that I was actually there then.
You said you're the mzee of the KOSU.
Like, you look at, you're in the background evaluating this child, and then 10 years later you're still following up and making sure, did this patient actually benefit from the procedure that we did? Most hospital systems don't have that follow-up. Okay, and we as KOSU, we really pride ourselves in that. Patient care should be longitudinal. Be in touch with your specialist. If your specialist is stuck in a certain way, he's in position to find out what's happening, and then he can consult. Luckily for KOSU, we have lots of collaborations with people in North America, Europe, Asia, Japan, that they're just a WhatsApp away. So you can never feel like stuck with a complex situation. So yes, success stories right from the pediatric sections. And then the patients who get to hip replacements and knee replacement, the improvement is actually drastic. It's really life-changing. Somebody who is really stuck in their sitting room, cannot even carry a grandchild, and the next 2 weeks they are really out and about. It's really amazing.
And of some of the procedures...
And probably we've seen lots of national team players with ruptured cruciate ligaments, and they have managed to access reconstructive surgeries, and they have managed to actually represent the country again and represent elite clubs, which is really a plus in Uganda.
When you talk of reconstructive surgery, what are some of the global trends in plastic and reconstructive surgery?
Plastics, probably I might just chip in, but with the orthopedic bit. The orthopedic bit. So like I told you, disability might be caused by bone defect. Bone defect might be something you got out of being born without bone in a certain part of your body, or a bone defect caused by infection acquired in childhood, or a bone defect caused by an accident. Okay. So when that bone defect is created, you need to replace it to restore function in that limb. So they're what we call free fibular flaps. It looks like a complex term, but it's a real complex surgery, but has been life-changing. We pick bone from your leg and then put it in the defect, and then over time it grows, and then we're able to regain function in that limb, bone transport and bone lengthening. Luckily for Uganda, from what we are hearing from the policymakers, the people who make the laws, when the donor organ donor law comes out, I think people will be able to donate some of their bone. Where would you go to your grave with viable bone? You would better give it to Idris so that he lives a more able life.
That's an interesting prospect. And I'll come to you, Winfred. We've been talking about accessibility, inclusivity, and the expense. At the end of the day, COSU is an NGO,
Yes.
non-profit. How do you sustain these expenses? How do you sustain these specialists, whom I am assuming Dr. Emmanuel doesn't come cheap?
No, he doesn't. So we have equipment to maintain. We have theaters. We have complex things that we need to be able to, you know, maintain the quality of service that Dr. Wocho has spoken about. The staff that we have, we need to maintain them, we need to run courses, we need to subsidize. So all of these things come with partnerships. So we, of course, as an NGO, we do resource mobilization just like any other organization. And like we said earlier, Christian Blind Mission has been, the hospital was founded by Christian Blind Mission. And they have, over the years, been a strong, can I say, a traditional donor for us. But we also have other partners that we work with, Hope and Healing, and many other organizations that fund our work. Usually it is for surgeries. Usually it's for medical surgeries and also care, and then there's a nutrition department. But we also have a private wing that caters for what maybe Dr. Manuel will speak about later. The people that come for private practice, private surgeries, yes, like tummy tucks and all of that, they are available at COSU. Yeah, plastic surgery, they're available at COSU. So those walk-in patients, they are able to pay the full cost of the services that we offer. And that money is all injected back to subsidized services for those people that cannot afford the services. Yes, so we have partners that are walking the journey with us, donors, we get donations, we get grants.
Yep.
We also get persons in Uganda that say, okay, foundations in Uganda that say, oh, we're giving you money to do 50 surgeries for children of this nature. We, maybe something else, we also have a project that caters for fistula at COSU. Currently, that project subsidizes a full cost. I'd like to mention this because with the prolonged lockdown and so many teenage pregnancies, it's you know, a high probability that a teenage mother may have got, you know, birth injuries. So we have that project, and we have a gynecologist that oversees that project. So it's such projects that help us. And then we have also a project that helps us to subsidize for clefts. Yes, so any patient that comes, whether they are 65 or they are 2 years old or 1 year old, as long as they have, how would we describe that, the divided lip? Yeah, they are fully subsidized. So these kind of projects help us to run the hospital and to maintain our staff.
Our specialists.
Yes, our very special staff. Yes, so that's how we do it. We would like to see a lot more people coming in to help, say, fund different procedures for different, because the need is there. There is so much need. We actually sometimes, unfortunately, have to turn away some clients because now the need is so high. On a day, on a normal day, we have averagely over 200 patients that come, and sometimes that's a bit, you know, high. But also to be able to sustain the hospital, we combine the donations and those that can afford, then we're able to inject. We are a non-profit organization, so every money that the hospital makes, we re-inject it into subsidies. Yes.
So since 2006, COSU as a hospital, have you branched out to other locations?
No. and we don't intend to. No. What we would like to see is to expand COSO. Would like to do more with Mr. Stanley here, rehabilitation. Would like to I think there is a current plan to expand the rehabilitation department. Yes, and that will be in the next 2-3 years. It will be operational. But to have branches throughout the country, it's not as easy as people would think. How many orthopedic surgeons are in Uganda? I doubt there are 100.
We are approaching 80.
80. Yeah. COSO in itself has, say, 10%, almost 10% of them. So to have them, you know, to
spread
have this,
out.
Spread out. I'd like to say let's you know, concretize this, but also there are also programs, training programs for specialists at COSO. I would like to see that strengthened before we even think about spreading out.
So since you do not want to spread out, to the viewer who's just joined us, where is COSO located and how accessible is it for probably someone who lives in Karamoja?
Okay. We are located on Entebbe Road. We are in Chisubi on, I think, plot 46.
Yeah.
Yes. Our doors are open 8 to 5. We don't work over the weekends. We don't work, unfortunately, we are not an emergency hospital. We would like to let you go to an emergency hospital, and then if get stabilized, then you can, you know, come. We also don't work over the weekend, so it's work days, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. 8 to 5? Yes. How can they get to us? We have, you can book. You can book before coming. Usually, usually our customer care is open at any time. You can book. They're also on WhatsApp. At any time you can book. Yes, to see any specialist that you'd like. Yes, and they will give you guidance on what procedures. Okay, if you would like to. Given the different specialties of the doctors, if it is plastics, you'll be guided accordingly. If it is ortho services that you need, you'll be guided accordingly. Yes, I think. And
I ask that because earlier on you mentioned that one of your target population is the Mwananchi who cannot afford probably a more expensive hospital or a specialist. So this is me. I live at the outcasts of the city, probably in upcountry in Karamoja, or I earn probably 10,000 shillings a month. How do you mobilize me to understand that there is this service that I can actually access? When we create awareness, we've tried to create awareness through platforms like this, but also other platforms. But secondly, also COSO works in partnership with other organizations. So we have partners in all these places. You mentioned Karamoja. We have very many clients from Karamoja that come, even for nutrition rehabilitation. Many come. So we work through partners. In northern Uganda, we have partners as well. In the west, we have partners. In east, we have partners. So yes, even in Sudan, we receive clients from Sudan as well. So part of what we do in our community engagements and all this is to strengthen the referral system, not only to COSO, by the way, but also to other rehabilitation facilities. There are some conditions that we believe can be handled at other facilities and not to come to COSO really because, you know, can it be handled, say, somewhere else? To ease out on the workload side. So we try to, in every region, we've tried to really create a referral system and meet with, you know, that referral system involves health centers, the DHOs of those places, down to the village health teams, you know, and to the different places that we think the services can be, you know, got. And then if from there they cannot handle, then they can refer to COSO. We also have partners that in these different regions that have MOUs with us, and they're able to pay for some services. So those
under those MOUs are also subsidized, because then if you're bringing clients, say 50 clients, we're going to still subsidize. But then the income that comes will take care of the others that maybe have not been fortunate to be referred by a partner. So yes, that's how we pretty much do it.
Mr. Lubega Stanley, we understand COSU is an NGO funded by different organizations, but as we know in Uganda that most of our hospitals face a challenge of either accessing the equipment that you need to carry out your job. Do you face some challenges at COSU that probably could close that gap of servicing your clients?
I didn't get that question. Probably. Try rephrasing it.
Okay, so are there any capacity challenges, capacity gaps at COSU or generally in the department or field of rehabilitation in Uganda?
Well, rehabilitation is broad and it's evolving. Over the years it keeps changing because the trends keep changing. Like they say, disease keep changing. Today you're treating it with something else, tomorrow it's responding to something else. Of course, there are always capacity gaps. You try and cover them as much as possible, but there are always capacity gaps. But at COSU, we tried to bridge as much as possible. At least we have specialists in most of the places in the rehab section. We try to make sure that at least they are at different levels of education. They have different exposures in terms of what they have learned, and some of them have actually gone for further training. Like in the workshop, I could mention the people that work in the workshop have had training in Ghana in making orthoses and prostheses. So these are artificial limbs, and these are other appliances that support the children as we are taking care of their deformities. In the past, some have even had an opportunity to go and have exchange visits in Canada. So we try to cover those capacity gaps as much as possible because the trend keeps changing. And the fact that we are trying to enter into sports medicine, there is fertile land there, so we need to make sure that we can cover that as much as possible. We have been so much into musculoskeletal, post-op, pre-op, plastic and reconstructive surgery. Now we are branching off into sports medicine. So that is an element that we really need to make sure that we have the capacity to handle that in terms of facilities and in terms of specialization and knowledge. So probably 2 or 3 years from now we'll have a fully fledged specialized center for that, and most likely we'll be able to serve the public better than we are doing right now.
For the benefit of some of our viewers, you mentioned sports medicine. Could you expound on what that means?
Well, sports, like we all know, it's a lucrative business. For some of us that support football, we know some of those athletes, and some of them earn about 500,000 a week.
Dollars.
Dollars.
Dollars. Our athletes over the years have been suffering with sports injuries, which have not been managed very well, and some of them have faced early retirement. Because this service hasn't been there in Uganda as we want to have it. It involves a lot of fields in terms of doctors, in terms of rehab specialists, in terms of nutritionists, in terms of facilities, what you need to make sure that an athlete is able to play at the level that they were playing even more after they have
even after injury.
Yes, after injury. Which service has been lacking? Let's say right now most of the teams don't have sports medicine doctors. Maybe they have physios, maybe they don't. And after that, after injury, maybe they get the service or maybe they don't.
They don't. And then their career is over.
Yes.
So and just because we are running low on time, I'll come to you, Dr. Emma. Because you are a specialized expert, you might need a few things in place to actually give the service to your clients, to your patients. Are there challenges that you face?
Definitely we have challenges. First and foremost, it's equitability of resources. Clients are spread outside the whole country. Specialists are clogged in Kampala. So how do you get people to come and access a service? That's one bottleneck. Two, when they come, when they have their problem, do you have the support system in terms of specialists to handle them? You as a solo orthopedic surgeon, you might actually struggle if you don't have a plastic surgeon in your practice, because you'll fix the bone, but then how is the soft tissue envelope of that limb? You need a plastic surgeon. So you might be unfortunate to actually practice orthopedics without support of a nutritionist, plastic surgeon, physical therapist, psychotherapist. So in the event that probably the psychotherapist is on leave, it might be very difficult for you to actually amputate a patient, because losing a limb is not something that...
It's a life-changing decision.
Yeah. So you as an orthopedic surgeon, you may just be looking at, oh, let me take off the dangerous limb, and then the patient's life will be saved. But the psychological trauma that comes with that is also, and also orthopedics is a technologically advancing specialty. People are doing total knee replacements with robotics. Are we yet there as COSU? Probably not. Do we hope to get there? Probably when I'm long gone. I don't know. But
You're saying, so probably you're going to live for the next 50 years.
So, but again, another handicap. Like I've seen, again, I'm very passionate about limb reconstruction. Like when you have that limb deformity, when you have that limb shortening, how are we able to restore your limb in its actual parameters? I'm very passionate about that. But again, until the law on organ donations, and because a bone graft can really save you a lot of time in reconstruction. But if that's not been able to be operationalized in the country, we are really lagging behind on this. And I think a bone donation might actually be way cheaper, because the donation is cost-free. It's vis-a-vis fibula grafts, bone transport, which are really very expensive and risky procedures.
And on that note, Doctor, as we wind up, what can be done more to improve these services and accessibility for the disabled?
I think advocacy. Advocacy at all levels. At the lowest level, even at the family level. For example, if you're constructing your house, why would you put a flight of 10 stairs going up? You're probably hoping that you'll be that fit even in your 80s. Now, if you get a visitor who is on a wheelchair, they cannot even access your home. So it's advocacy at all levels, right from kindergartens through primary school, in churches, in all public places. Let us be mindful of a physically handicapped person, because like my sister Amuge said, Amuge is a special name to me, but like my sister Amuge said, let us be mindful. We can be disabled at any one time. So in whatever we do, let us be in the physically disabled person's corner and guard their rights and interests.
Stanley,
Yes.
in 1 minute, what can be done? What can be improved?
I think we should get into a habit of seeking specialized services. That is something that is lacking across. I will not mention what he has already mentioned, advocacy. People don't seek specialized services. I think they are because of the fear of the cost. But then at the end of the day, they incur more costs in seeking unspecialized services. By the time they come to the hospital, the problem either it's worse or it is too bad that they will even incur double or triple the costs in treating it. So it's important that, let's say if you have a back pain, go and seek an orthopedic surgeon. If you have any sort of problem, just seek a specialized help. It will save you a lot.
Indeed.
Winfred?
Because we are running out of time. Winfred, please.
I'd like to say, okay,
in
Dr. Wochu and Mr. Sandy have said very important things, but I would like to say that our health workers in the normal government facilities, they need to be sensitized and their capacity built in terms of being sensitive towards disability, and also I'd like to think that that is the point where most referrals should come from. A lot of the issues would be, you know, sorted if, say, a club for child is identified from maternity ward and referred immediately, things like that. Let's all be sensitive.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, lady and gentlemen, for coming through. If you have just joined us, we are concluding our conversation on the possibility of rehabilitations for persons with physical disability. If you want to catch up with the conversation, go to our YouTube channel, that is NTV Uganda, and you will be able to watch the conversation from the start to the end. And if you want to continue to be part of the conversation, go to our social media platforms, that is on Twitter, Facebook, use the hashtag disability inclusion, and tell us what is your experience and what can be done to better these services for the physically disabled. My name is Idris Matusegawa, and Susan Mujawa